Now the jab is the most used and useful punch in boxing. It's used to set up other shots, other bigger, harder shots. So we get into our boxing stance, 60% of the weight on our back foot, 40% on the front foot. Good shape, chin down. All we're doing is moving our arm from this position here to this position here. I've turned over my knuckles, I've extended my arm, and I'm looking down the arm and kinked over my wrist like this. The jab has to be fast and has to be like a whip. So your arm has to be super relaxed. It starts at the shoulder. So your hand's like this, your shoulder initiates the movement like that. Your hand doesn't pull back before you throw it. So your shoulder initiates it, and then your arm comes out like this. So it looks like this. All I'm doing, starting with the shoulder, and the shoulder's just pushing my arm out like that. It's like a wave of energy going through my arm, straight out into the knuckles, which I'm turning over and kinking my wrist. I'm maintaining shape as I'm throwing it, keeping my hands high, keeping my elbow tucked in. A good tip for the jab is we keep our hand open until it lands on impact. Even then, you don't necessarily need to clench it up. The idea is to keep it nice and relaxed, and it needs to be fast so our opponent doesn't see it coming, and it helps us line up the other shots, like the right hand or the left hook.
Every time you go training, you're actually getting worse at boxing. Most likely because you're doing reps wrong. Every time you do a rep wrong, you get worse at boxing because you get further away. You wire in the signals incorrectly, so you get further away from doing the rep right. Okay, so let's say I'm throwing a jab. If every time I practice a jab wrong, I'm making it more and more natural for me to do that movement with my arm. Whereas every time I'm doing it correct, then I'm getting better and closer to my goal. We've got Fighter Camp Edition 3 starting on July the 4th. And in Fight Camp, it's like a 12-week built from first principles course and coaching plan where you will learn everything without doing a single rep wrong. So every single rep you do is taking you closer to your goal of becoming a better boxer. Every second you're not in the fight camp, every rep you do is making you worse. So make the decision today, go join Fight Camp before all the spots fill. Do you ever get countered because you keep throwing lazy jabs because your shoulder is just on fire and you're super fatigued? I know I used to do that a lot, but this one secret little technique that I implemented got rid of my jab fatigue completely. And in this video, I'm going to break down how you can do that. Why does your jab actually get fatigued? It's because there's too much tension and pressure going into this anterior delt, the front muscle on your deltoid or on your shoulder. When I throw a jab like this, all of the pressure that's put on the end of my knuckles by my opponent's face gets transferred all into this shoulder here. This is like jabbing someone in the face with a twig, right? There's a lot of ability to this. Well, there's not a lot of rigidity in my punch because all the force is being put on this tiny little shoulder muscle here, okay? And you'll notice that my arm isn't in line with my stance. So to get our jab like a long scaffold pole, super rigid, we need to get our arm from this position here onto the power line. The power line is where we stack all of our joints behind our knuckles. And when we do that, we have way more resistance behind our knuckles. So if I'm throwing a jab like this, all of that tension is here. I need to move this final position of my jab so that I'm stacking not only my elbow joint, not only my shoulder joint, but my rear hip joint all the way into that weight I've got on my back foot. Now I've got way more resistance, okay? The resistance isn't all just coming down onto my lead shoulder like this, where it can snap like a twig. It's now going all the way through my entire body down to my back foot, okay? And that's because I made the adjustment from here to here. The key components of this is your arm or your shoulder moving up to your chin, right? Because now there's less tension here. There's actually no tension in my lead shoulders or here as I'm supporting my arm. But it's also moving my hip back and rotating my body so it's pretty much completely side on with the direction that I'm punching, okay? if I land my jab like this, I've now got all of that resistance like I would have using a metal pole to jab you in the face. Okay, so providing the resistance is what takes the pressure off this shoulder, therefore meaning you eliminate the fatigue and you get way more power in your shot because there's way more resistance. So the aim then is stacking our joints behind our knuckles, but it's all well and good me just saying that. How would you actually do that in a fast-paced fighting situation? You need to get the entire kinetic chain of your body in sync and working at the right time, so that when your knuckles do meet the target, they're not meeting the target like this and causing all the pressure to land on your shoulder, but they're landing like this, okay, where all the pressure comes down into your back foot and you're using the ground as support as opposed to just your shoulder. And that actually starts not in the arm. It's not me moving my arm to here that does it. It starts with me moving my hip more open. So this is closed, this is open. When we move it more open, this is stage one, is the hip going back first. Once the hip's gone back, then my upper body can come and follow it. Then my arm can come from the position it was here up to here, okay, without having to use any muscles in my shoulder to really throw my jab. That also means that a jab needs to be super relaxed, because obviously tension in your arm means that, you know, you've got to fuel those muscles with ATP and, you know, your energy stores, which is ATP. But yeah, but when my arm's relaxed, that means that I don't need to tense or contract any of the muscles in my arm and shoulder. So therefore, it's way less fatigued. And it should, using this kinetic chain, automatically just whip up to this point. Using your hip, using your upper body, your arm should almost just float into this position where you can add a little bit of tension at the end, give it that full rigidity where it's got the complete resistance to, you know, not cave in, not fatigue your shoulder, and land with a lot of power. And the last little bit is just really whipping over your knuckles, that last stage of the kinetic chain, to really transfer your power into the punch. See how my hips going first, upper body, then my arm. As opposed to there's plenty of advice going around on, you know, the intricacies of what makes a good jab, but to really find the fundamental truth, I put on YouTube, found Larry Holmes and slowed his jabbing technique down to like a quarter speed and really analysed his kinetic chain, and that's what I'm going to teach you in this video. As you saw from that clip, the jab has the ability to knock people down or maybe even knock people out. And this is what's referred to as the power jab. But the power jab is a bit of a misconception. People think that you need to use tension in their arms to really get power into a jab. I mean, to imagine that you're doing a bench press. And when you do a bench press, you're exerting force on a load using the tension in your arms and tension in your chest and your shoulders. And as you press the weight, your arms aren't moving quickly because they're tense. And your arms can't move quickly when they're tense. Like literally just experiment with it yourself. Like extend your arm whilst it's tense. It's actually near like impossible, right? If you're tensing your bicep, right? Your bicep's pulling your arm towards your body. It's not pushing it away. Obviously your tricep is, but if all your arm is tense like this, you can't snap out that punch, right? And that's the difference alongside the rest of the kinetic chain, which I'll explain now. So the kinetic chain, when you're throwing a jab, is, if you look at my stance, my hips are at this angle, right? Which means that they have a little bit of leverage this way, and even more so if I rotate them a little bit this way, which is what Larry Holmes was doing. He was starting from a more square on position and using his hips going first, he'd push his rear hip backwards like this. And this little motion here causes a stretch between your right hip and your lead shoulder. This is called a cross body chains. That's it. When this stretch is created here, there's a cross body chain going from here to here, and it's stretched. And that stretch causes elasticity. Now, elasticity isn't really used in like a bench press, right? Because you're moving the weight slowly and elasticity happens super quick. So in this little stretch of the hip going backwards and then the upper body being stretched across here, there's like a little bit of an elastic explosion, if you will. It's trying to catch up to where the hip's going. So the hip will go first, that stretch will be made, and then your upper body will follow. When the upper body follows, there's another stretch made across the top of your chest into your shoulder where your arm is going to follow. So your hip will go first, your upper body will try catch, and your arm will try catch your upper body. Okay, and this is the chain that's happening when Larry Holmes flicks out his jabs, right? He pushes back with a hip, and then that stretch is made, the upper body catches up with that, and then the arm catches up with that. Now, the last piece of the puzzle, so it's not the last piece, but the next piece of the puzzle is where your arm starts to move. Okay, so your upper body's gone, now your arm's got to catch up. And the only way your arm's going to catch up properly, like quickly, to be able to move your arm quickly is having that relaxation in your arm.
You don't punch with a jab, you slap him with a jab. If I tighten up, it won't be as quick. So I keep it loose, and I hit you from loose, and when I come out, I turn here, and I catch you with the knuckle part. That's the part that hurts.
So as you come back this way, your arm is going to try and catch up with your upper body, and it's going to shoot forward like that. All right, what I'm not doing whilst I rotate back this way is tensing my arm up like I'm going to press something. It's completely relaxed so that it fires off that elasticity that's created in that stretch. Okay, and then when it fires forward much quickly than if I was to push the punch out. Okay, so hip goes, upper body tries to catch up, arm tries to catch up to that, and that results in your body going through gears. Okay, now imagine you've got gears on a bike, and the first gear is super easy to turn, but it doesn't really generate much force. It doesn't put much force on the back wheel to make you go faster. That's basically like your hip. Your hip doesn't take any effort to really move, but it doesn't really do much. It just sets off the next gear, which is your upper body. Okay, so your hip will go, then your upper body will try catch. Your upper body's the next gear, and that is accelerating the third gear, which is your arm. Okay, so it's there, next gear, and then there's one more, and that one is the turning over of your wrist at the end. Okay, so it's like a chain. We've got first gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear, and the fourth gear produces the most amount of force into your opponent, but it also takes the most amount of force to start, which you've got from first gear, second gear, third gear, and the fourth gear. Now, I'll explain the fourth gear because this one's super important. I want you to imagine someone pitching a baseball, and if you really slow it down, watch it in slow motion, you'll see that their arm, like basically, it looks like it pretty much dislocates, right? They put that much force, the elbow comes forward like this, and then the knuckle, well, their hand is playing catch up, and it sort of turns over like this. When it turns over, that extra whip is put into the punch, right, or into the baseball, which is exactly the same with the jab. As I'm turning it over, hip, upper body, arm, and then turn it over like this, that's that final little bit of elasticity which really carries forward that power that originally came from your hips. Okay, so it was like a chain, there, and then turning over right at the end. So how does Larry Holmes use this kinetic chain to throw his jab? Or he uses it off a bouncing rhythm as he moves around. I'll overlay some clips as I'm speaking through it. He's like bouncing around the ring, and on each of these bounces, he puts pressure into the ground. All right, so he exerts force on the ground, and that's Newton's third law. As soon as you push into the ground, you get a force come back up into your legs, and that force you can use to turn the first gear. Okay, so imagine you're actually, it's an in-depth analogy. We'll go with it. So imagine you're turning your car on. Pushing into the ground is like turning the ignition on. And then first gear is your hips, and then your body's coming off this. Okay, so it should look like this. If you slow that down, you see my hips are going, then my upper body's going, then my arm's going, and then I'm turning over my knuckles. Now there's a lot of importance as well of turning over your knuckles, because you know we talked about the baseball pitch as like your arms catching up with your elbow because the stretch is coming through here. Well, turning that when they pitch, right, and they're following through, it's this motion. It's like an arcing motion. Exactly the same when you're jabbing. You're like turning over, and that's what's accelerating your knuckles round. That's what gives that final whip. So you need to make sure that you're turning your knuckles over like this. So your palm will start facing this way, and as you extend, coming through here, you're whipping your arm over like that. You can basically just use that one little principle, that last gear, in any jab, right? You can just keep the rest of your body pretty still and just whip your hand over like this. But to get that extra power, the power jab, like we talked about at the start, you need to use your hips, you need to use your upper body to really be able to fire out your jab and do a lot more damage. Turning your knuckles over at the end is also super important, because that's putting all of that power that you generated from the ground into your knuckles, in particular these three, right? Because that's that power line. Is turning the knuckles over into the target, okay?
And when I come out, I turn here, and I catch you with the knuckle part. That's the part that hurts.
So following this kinetic chain, your jab will have a lot more power and be a lot quicker, and also a lot harder to see coming.
I'm sure you already know the jab is the most effective and useful punch in boxing. But there's actually other ways we can use the jab to manipulate our opponent and set up other shots. So in this video, I'm going to give you 5 unique ways to use the jab. The first unique way we can use the jab is by blinding, right? So let's imagine our opponent's got his guard nice and tight. Now we can use our lead hand, just place it in the middle of their guard. Now they can't see fuck all. So now there's several things we can do once we've blinded our opponent. We could either move like this. We only leave our hand on the gloves for a split second, because otherwise it leaves us vulnerable for their punches. For example, as I put it out, you could throw a right hand over the top like that. But if I do it quickly and move, and you won't know where I am. You see Lomachenko do this a lot. I can move the other way too. The other thing we can do when we're using our lead hand to blind is, as soon as we've blinded them with our lead hand, we can throw shots, and we can leave our hand there as we throw it. I always see Shakur Stevenson do this, like put his lead hand up, throw a body shot as it's in the way. You could also do this, leave it there, come around the side, or leave it there, come up the middle, go to the body. So that's how we can use our lead hand to blind our opponent and either move or throw shots. The next thing we can do is just touch with the lead hand. So we want to try and keep, well, the main aim of boxing is to try and make our opponent think about what we're doing more than what they're doing. If we can make them think more about what I'm doing than what they're doing themselves, then they're not going to be thinking about how they can land their punches. They're just going to be thinking about how to avoid mine. It's just like a game of chess, right? If you're constantly thinking about how you're going to checkmate their king, then, and thinking less defensively, then you're more likely to checkmate their king. Whereas if they're constantly pressuring you and trying to checkmate your king, then you're not really thinking about checkmating their king. So then the more you put them under pressure, the more you make them think, then the more advantage you have. A great way to make them think more is by touching with the lead hand. You want to stay active in a fight. The more active you are, the more they have to think about what you're going to do. So a thing you can do is just keep touching like this with the lead hand. And now that's keeping their mind occupied on what you're doing. That's just touching, and they're thinking about what you're going to do next. Obviously, you can throw punches off this. You keep touching, come to the body, go around the side. You can just throw punches, combinations off this, making them think more. And that's all you're doing is just touching with that lead hand. It takes no effort. It's worth doing. The next unique way that we can use our lead hand is by feinting with it. Right? Obviously, the jab is the most commonly thrown punch, and you want to try make people react to your feints. To make people react to your feints, you've got to almost convince yourself that you're going to throw them, and then only actually throw 20% of them, as we talked about in another video. So with the lead hand, it needs to be twitching. See, my feints are that good. Really shit himself. Use the lead hand and twitch up and down. Use it to move like this. Now, the guy I used to box with would literally have his hand going like this non-stop, and it's bloody annoying because you just don't know what it's going to do. And then as you're twitching like this, you can just, see it. You can feint down and go high, or feint high and go low. Using a lead hand to feint is actually very effective for setting up other shots. Quick example could be, I could feint down the middle and come around the sides, or I could feint to the body and come up to the head, or I could feint to the head and come to the body. But yeah, use the lead hand to feint. The next unique way you can use your lead hand or your jab is by using it to split their guard. Now imagine he's got a really tight guard. If I throw a jab like this, then it's not really going to be able to get through. But if I orientate my hand 90 degrees like this, then it's a bit thinner and I can split open that guard a bit better and get through. Right? Usually it doesn't do that, but it should. It should. Oh, fucking hell.
Yeah, this is splitting.
What? You put your guard proper?
Yeah, I'm just not going to fucking do that, mate.
You put your guard proper like this?
Well, no, because you're just going to split my guard.
That's the point.
I don't want you to split my guard and hit me in the nozzle.
I'm not going to hit you in the face. Do it slow, look.
Oh.
Are we cutting all that out? Right. As I was saying, instead of throwing the jab like this, orientate our hands so we can get through and split the guard, right? This also gives us the opportunity to obviously land with our jab and then come up the middle with other shots. So once we split that guard, we want to follow up with other punches or a straight right, or use it to set up a body shot. Final unique way you can use your lead hand is by using it as a trigger. The jab is usually the most counterable punch, right? Because it's the one you're expecting the most. So if someone's trying to counter your jab, let's say you go to throw a right hand, then I know that's triggering Jordan to slip and throw a right hand, right, to expose that opening that I've created from throwing the jab, right? Now I can trigger him to do that counter by throwing my jab. I now know this. I've downloaded this information, so I know as he's going to go and do that, I can drop outside of it and throw my own right hand, or I could feint, get him to do that slip and right hand, and then as he comes through with that, I can throw my right hand, or I could lean back out of the way of his and throw mine, or I could catch him on the way out with a left hook. There are some examples that you could do. So you can also use your jab or your lead hand to trigger a reaction out of your opponent, anticipate it, and then counter the counter.